Hi everybody, my name is John Carver, and the show today is called How to Figure Them Out. And the purpose of the show is to share with you that there's only 4 types of people on the planet. Yes, there's 3.7 billion human beings on the planet, but there's really only 4 types of people that you need to know about that can definitely make an impact in your life, in your relationships, in your workplace, and in your family. I want to start with the first category, and I'm going to split the 4 in 2, the introverts and the extroverts. The first one I want to talk about here today is called the Melancholy Temperament. Now, these groups of people have been categorized some 2,000 years ago, and many organizations, many very educated people have categorized them with different titles. But we're going to use the term that was founded some 2,000 years ago. So again, the first one is called the melancholy group. Now, the melancholy temperament, we'll call them, are people that are very artistic. They're thoughtful. Many of them are musical. Many of them, I'll say, they cry at the drop of a hat. Many of them are very emotionally driven, like a roller coaster that goes up and down and up and down. When you have melancholy people, they are very, very impressed with people who care about other people. They also are people that are very perfectionistic, let's say. They're people that don't like to be in the center of attention. They would rather stay behind the scenes. They will put themselves out for the benefit of other people over and over again to the point of exhaustion. These people are relatively organized, and sometimes they're a little bit on the obsessive side because they want to do so much for everybody all the time. Now, there's also some handicaps, if you will, some negatives to the melancholy temperament. Now, I don't assume to believe that the list that I'll be sharing with you today is all the list or all the strengths and the weaknesses of this particular personality style. But you have to be very careful of the melancholy temperament because they are, and I'll try to be as polite as I can, they tend to be relying on their feelings most of the time instead of the facts. Let me give you an example. Many melancholies, not certainly all of them, but a good chunk of them, have a very hard time getting motivated to do much of anything because the basis of their foundation is feelings-based. So if they don't feel like doing stuff, guess what happens? They're not going to do stuff. Let's say they have a list of goals to do. Well, it's going to be very difficult for them to achieve those goals. They tend to be sometimes very negative, very pessimistic. The glass is half empty many times with this personality style because of the fact that they rely most of the time on their feelings. So when they get motivated to do something, they do it. But if they're not motivated to do it, guess what? They're not going to do it. They tend to be very moody, which kind of goes hand in hand with being emotional, doesn't it? Well, these people are also extremely dedicated to family. They're extremely dedicated to their workplace because they're not the type of people who want to rock the boat. They just want everybody to hold hands and sing Kumbaya and the whole world just get along. So when there's confrontation in a workplace or in a family, it shuts them down immediately. A melancholy person is founded not only on emotionalism, but also fear. They're very, very fearful. Although they care about people, they may not extend themselves out too much to make a difference because they're afraid of being rejected. That's the worst thing that you can do to a melancholy person is to reject them. And I'll get to that in just a bit. Now that's just 1/4, that's just a highlight of 1/4 of the melancholy personality style, if you will. These people tend to be cautious. In fact, there are many folks that I know in this category that have great plans, they have great ideas, they have great missions in life that they want to accomplish, but they're so afraid to get out of the boat, if you will. They're so afraid to take that step because they're so afraid, again, feelings-based, is to fall on their face and make a mess of themselves and disappoint people. They don't want to disappoint people. They don't want to be embarrassed themselves. They want to do everything properly and correctly, but all that analytical behavior stops them in their tracks from really moving forward. Now that's the melancholy temperament, an introvert, an extreme introvert, but a very caring person. The next category, or the next personality style I want to share with you, is called the phlegmatic personality style. Now, the phlegmatic personality style, I liken it to Mr. Spock on the old Star Trek series that's been out for a number of years, 40 years or so. Now, the phlegmatic personality style is also an introverted personality style, but it's different than the melancholy. There's a big difference. The melancholy personality style, as I shared, is emotionally based. The phlegmatic personality style is logically based. In fact, they are somewhat polar opposites on the introvert side of these four types of people. Now, the melancholy style are kind of hyperactive many times. They're emotional. The phlegmatic, on the other hand, is very cool and calm. Both the melancholy and phlegmatic personality styles, they gain strength, they gain power by being alone. They gain strength by just having themselves in a room or out in the car or wherever they can be alone. That's how they get energized versus the other two categories, which I'll get into in just a bit, that they gain energy from being around other people. So the phlegmatic is very logical, and I'll call them like Spock-like. Very, very detailed, very introverted. They're very kind. They're consistent. They don't like to be in front of people. Just like the melancholy temperament, they would rather stay behind the scenes and not make any waves at all. That's the last thing you want to do, is to ask a phlegmatic to do something in front of people without being prepared. That would freak them out. Even though they're not emotional, that would shut them down very, very quickly. So if you have a phlegmatic person or people in your life, you don't want to spring something on them and ask them to do something, because they're the type of people who want to research things extensively in order to get all the information they need to have the facts, because they are very perfectionistic. They want to make sure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. They're very diplomatic. They think fast on their feet. They're very intelligent. Let me just share a personal story, probably an embarrassing story. I'm a melancholy, generally speaking. My wife, Tammy, is a phlegmatic. Again, I'm the emotional one. She's the logical one. So I think we make a perfect match, because she calms me down and I get her moving when sometimes she wants to, take a little bit more time doing things that we need to get done to get the ball rolling in certain areas of our lives. Now, phlegmatics are also very observant about other people. They can spot a rat a mile away. Whereas us melancholies, we, again, want to hold hands and sing Kumbaya, and we think, at least many times, that everybody's for our benefit, that everybody's great, that the world is a great place. That's obviously not true, but the phlegmatic, understands that it's very important to get things done in an orderly fashion. Phlegmatics are extremely organized. The clothes in their closets are very neat and organized. Everything has a place, and there's a place for everything. A melancholy, not so organized. If you look at the desk of a melancholy, it's pretty much a mess, because it's not important. Because we're feelings based, right? The phlegmatic is very logically based. Their file drawers are organized, alphabetized. Their desks are totally organized and very neat. Not the melancholies. We could care less if stuff's organized or neat. We just want to love people and have a good time and want to make a difference in people's lives. So there's a vast difference between phlegmatics and melancholies. Now, phlegmatics can also, like melancholies, can be stubborn at times. Because if you're going to push a phlegmatic or a melancholy to do something, you have to do it in a certain way, and I'll get to that in just a bit. But you have to be able to talk to a phlegmatic and a melancholy in the way that they're going to understand, because if not, then you're going to find out that you're dealing with somebody that is not going to move very quickly at your pace. Now, also with the phlegmatic, and I don't even know why this is, but it is what it is, that phlegmatics they tend to be very sarcastic. Now, I've met a lot of phlegmatics in my career, and 90% of them or so are very, very sarcastic. Now, where that comes from, I don't know. Maybe that's that logical part in their mind that they see all us emotional people out there, and it doesn't make sense, so that sarcasm jumps in. I don't really understand it all, but just understand in your life that if you have somebody who's very sarcastic and logical, they may be a phlegmatic. They're, again, so detail-oriented. When we do stuff that's not very detailed or organized or emotional, it doesn't look right to them. So they're going to come off with this sarcasm that can be viewed as discouraging to us melancholy people who are just trying our best to get it done, because we have all these balls up in the air at the same time. And the phlegmatic is extremely organized to get stuff done in the way that they want to get it done. Now, it's also very important to understand with the phlegmatic personality style is if you want stuff done properly and with excellence, you want at least a few phlegmatics on your team, because they'll do the homework, they'll do the research, and they don't need to be in front of the crowd. They don't need to have credit for it or anything. They would rather blend into the background and nobody even know that they even existed, because their role, again, is to support the other people on the planet, if you will, or at least in the office or in the family. They don't need the credit, but they are the foundation, in my opinion, of a great family and a great organization, because the phlegmatics are the glue or the organizers or the ones who know how to organize things in the company and the family to get stuff done better than us disorganized folks that have stuff going on all over the place. So those two categories, the melancholies and the phlegmatics, are the introverted types of people. Now there's two more. Now I'm just touching on very lightly on what these categories are. But the other two are the extroverted personality styles, or the people that like being around other people. So let's kind of jump into that just a bit. So we talked about the melancholies, we talked about the phlegmatics. Both are introverts. They want to blend into the background. Then you have the polar opposites of these introverts, and now the extroverts. The first one I'll share with you is the sanguine personality style. Now, the sanguine personality style is very, very different than the melancholy and the phlegmatic. And there's several reasons why. The sanguine personality style, and I'll just use broad terms here today, but the sanguine personality style just wants to have fun. They like to party. They're not into details at all. They know a lot of people, but they only know a little bit about those people. Whereas the melancholy knows fewer people, but they know a lot about those people because they're really deep into relationships. Now, the sanguine personality style, they are very outgoing. In fact, they're like bubbly outgoing. They're very confident. They're very warm. They're pleasant. They smile all the time. They're fun to be around. But generally speaking, and I don't want to be insulting to any of the four, but generally speaking, they're not as deep, not nearly as deep as the phlegmatic. Remember the logical one. Because sanguines just want to have fun. That's all. Their life is surrounded by just having fun. So like the melancholy, they're not very organized because that's not important. They just want to go out and have a good time and laugh and party and have a wonderful experience. So details to a sanguine is not important. Details just don't matter to a sanguine. In fact, they get very bored very quickly. They don't like being quiet. They certainly don't like not doing stuff. In fact, they get very depressed when they're not around other people. So that kind of echoes the point here that the strength or energy for a sanguine is being around other people. That's how they get more power. That's how they get more strength. Whereas the melancholy personality style and the phlegmatic personality style, they get strength. They get stronger by being what? Alone. That's how they bulk up emotionally, right? The sanguine bulks up emotionally when they're around other people. They get more energy. They feel better. They're inspired. They're empowered when they're around other folks. Now, with a sanguine, though, they tend to be impulsive. So they'll do stuff without thinking it through because, again, unlike the phlegmatic, they're not as deep, generally speaking, as the phlegmatic is, who thinks deep, but they don't move nearly as fast as a sanguine would. So that kind of echoes the point that I shared earlier, that sometimes that they do stuff without thinking. Now, because the sanguine is so people-oriented, they have a habit of being late. Whereas the phlegmatic and the melancholy, that's the worst thing that can happen, is if they're late for anything, because they tend to be perfectionistic, as I've said now a few times. The sanguine is not perfectionistic at all. In fact, they'll come to work sometimes with the hair this way and the clothes not exactly right. Why? Because it is truly not important to a sanguine. Again, they just want to have fun. Sometimes they're really loud because they just want to have a great time. Whereas a melancholy, they're not really much about being in front of people at all. They would rather just, speak softer and not let anybody pay attention to them or notice them because they don't want to be seen. The sanguine personality style likes to be seen. Let me give you kind of a short example. A cheerleader would be a great example of what a sanguine is. Out there in front of people, they like the attention, they like the adoration. Sometimes not even sometimes, they're often distracted very easily. Because sanguines want to do so much, so many times, with so many people, stuff distracts them considerably. Well, how does that happen? Well, because they are not, again, detail-oriented. They just want to have fun. So if Joe Smo over here says, I want to go there, they're going to go there. Or if Susie Q says, I want you to do this, they're going to go over here and do this. Why? Because they just want to have fun. That's the sanguine personality style. They tend to also exaggerate. That's one of the biggest downfalls of a sanguine. Now, all four have downfalls. We'll get into that in just a bit. But the sanguine tends to exaggerate. The old story is, I caught a fish this big, but really the fish was that big. That's one of the struggles of a sanguine, because they get so into it emotionally, they kind of make that fish a lot bigger than what it really is. So that's the sanguine. So as you've seen so far, all three personality styles have some really good strengths. They also have some struggles that they need to work on, like all of us do. Now, the fourth category is called the choleric. Now, the choleric personality style is very ambitious. They're passionate. They're leaders. They are people that are great at solving problems. And I'll get to how that's done in just a few. But cholerics are the type that you want on your team if you need somebody out front that knows how to get the stuff done, who will break through walls, who will do whatever it takes to get it done. That's the type of people that you want on your team. Now, with the choleric, it can also be some struggles in that relationship. Let me give you some examples. The choleric temperament is so outgoing and so driven that oftentimes they run right over people in their path. Sometimes they can be viewed as very rude and inflexible and definitely impatient because, again, they like to run through walls. So if there's a melancholy in the way who's a feeling-based personality style, guess what's going to happen? They're going to run right through that melancholy, and that melancholy is going to sit in a corner and pout, really, because the choleric didn't care about his feelings. We'll get back to that in just a few minutes also. Now, the choleric has a very difficult time relaxing because they want to do stuff consistently. They want to go places and do things and change the world and run through brick walls and tunnel under this and that. They want to do great things quickly. They're very confident. They're motivating. But one of the negatives is they, like I said earlier, they don't really care about other people's feelings. In fact, it really frustrates them. It angers them because a melancholy will then get a little upset when somebody slams a door in their face or yells at them or gives them a bad review on something. The choleric could care less because the choleric, hear me now, is always right. The choleric thinks that whatever they do is always right, and you got to be really careful to tell the choleric, if you choose, that they're not right sometimes. And I'll share with you how to handle the 4 temperaments in just a few. Now, the choleric has not much patience with people that are unlike them. So you figure there's 4 types of people, right? They have no patience with the sanguines. Because the sanguines, they just want to have fun, but they're not driven really in many directions, in one direction, whereas the choleric is driven in one direction. And the phlegmatic is so slow to the choleric, so logical, they're going to plan and plan and plan and plan and plan and plan and plan, and it's going to take 10 years to get stuff done, whereas the choleric really just wants to do stuff without maybe planning it all out. So that can be a real downfall for the choleric because they just want to break through those walls but not plan on how to do it, like what's on the other side of the wall. It could be a lion over there. They don't know. They just want to tear down that wall. They're very demanding because there's times when the choleric temperament doesn't care about what's going on in other people's lives. They could care less, and I could share story after story in my own life, how I've worked with and for people like that, who could care less about what's going on in your life. They just want to get stuff done. Who cares what your struggles are? Who cares what baggage you have? They just want to get the job done. That's the choleric. That's the raw personality style of that person in your own family or workplace. Now, they think that they're always right. Everybody else is wrong, but they're always right. Oh my gosh, I could tell you again 100 stories of people that I've worked around that you could prove to them over and over again that what they've done is wrong. Nope, I'm right. That's another chapter for another day. Again, so there's 4 personality styles: melancholy, phlegmatic, sanguine, and choleric. Now, if you have people in your family, which you do, extended family or right in your own household, that are one of those 4 personality styles, then you need to know how to handle those people. And also you have them obviously in your workplace. But let's start with your home. When you have, let's say, a melancholy personality style in your own home, let's say it's a child, okay? And that child is feeling oriented. They base their lives on if they're up or if they're down. Their mood and their actions are based on whether they're feeling good or whether they're not feeling so good. Now that temperament tends to be, again, I'm using a broad brush here today, but that temperament tends to be lazy because, again, their lives are based on emotions, right? So a good parent, or even I'll extend this example into the workplace, a good employer, if they have a melancholy personality style on their team or in their family, it's very important that you motivate them emotionally, that you have written goals that they need to achieve, And you have to, I'll be very blunt about it, you have to stay behind a melancholy to get stuff done if they're not driven. And I'll share a few tips about that also. For a melancholy person to get stuff done quickly, they have to surround themselves, frankly, with motivational and inspirational material that will remind them what they're capable of. Because the melancholy personality style is, again, somewhat negative. The glass is half empty. They run their lives based on feelings, so they, generally speaking, aren't going to do things as quickly as other people, because they're going to take 27 years to get stuff done, whereas a choleric will take 27 minutes to get stuff done. Do you understand? So with the melancholy personality style, the smart melancholy, if you now identify yourself as that personality style and you look back over your own life and say, you know what, I've wasted the last 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, that I should have been much farther ahead, then you need to surround yourself with information. And in my life, I'll be very blunt, I share with me on my desk inspirational quotes that remind me that I can achieve the things that I need to achieve in my life. Because I tend to look at things, believe it or not, as the glass is half empty. So I'm constantly playing mind games with myself, to be honest, that, you know what, I'm emotionally driven. That's how I'm wired. So I have to fight against that in order to achieve great things in my life. So if you identify yourself as a melancholy personality style, then if you want to get any place in life, you have to fight against the urges that I've shared with you at the beginning about, being too cautious and obsessive and pessimistic. You have to fight all those negatives in order to really blossom in your own personality style. So if you have a child in your home that's like that, you have to do that too. You have to constantly inspire them. Is it exhausting? Absolutely. Is it tiring? Yes. Because sometimes you just want to have them to do the homework. You just want them to clean the room or do the chores or whatever. But if that's how they're wired, and now you understand what moves them, then that's the tools that you need to use in order to do that. Now, a smart employer will do the same thing. A smart employer. Now, I haven't met too many of them, frankly, out there that understand the power of these four personality styles. Because you're going to find that, roughly speaking, a percentage of the people in any workplace have that personality style. So if you see that in the person after listening to this information, you're gonna have to inspire them emotionally, constantly encourage them, pat them on the back, share with them how much you appreciate them, because that moves them. Because remember, they're feelings based. Now, if you have a phlegmatic for a child or a co-worker, a phlegmatic, remember, is very logical, Spock-like, if you will, and they're very detail-oriented. So if they're very detail-oriented, then as an employer, I would definitely want those people in the back office, if you will, keeping things organized, because if you have a sanguine or a choleric personality style, it would be very smart to have a phlegmatic person in your life. Because remember, the sanguine are the party types. They want to have fun all the time. The cholerics are just, let's get stuff done. They don't care how it gets done, just so it gets done. But the phlegmatic personality style builds that blueprint, builds the roadmap for the rest of the world, frankly, to follow. So you want those people in your life. You want those people as a foundation for you if you're not a phlegmatic already. Now, one thing that's frustrating to a phlegmatic is that when somebody thrusts them out to do something that they haven't planned for. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have a choleric boss, or you're the boss or the manager or whatever, and you behind the scenes don't think that you're qualified to share certain information with the public or the staff or the shareholders or whatever. Why not go to a phlegmatic on your team to put together a presentation or a package or whatever you need to discuss? Give that phlegmatic a bunch of time with constant encouragement for them to explain it. Or have them put it together and invest time with you to explain how to explain the information. Because most of us are not as deep as the phlegmatic. So you want that phlegmatic in your life. But again, they would rather stay behind the scenes 100% of the time. Now, if you have a sanguine child, remember the party type, they want to have fun all the time, they know a lot of people, but not a whole lot about it. That's a tough temperament to calm down because they don't really care about details. So if you have a child that's a sanguine that wants to have fun all the time, you have to constantly rein them in to do schoolwork, don't you? Because they just want to get out there and run and ride their bike and go to parties and do all the other things. But their grades are less than average because details aren't important to them. So you're going to have to rein them back, slow them down a lot if you want to get them to do well in school. So maybe you could use incentives that if they do this right, if they get an A or a B in this class, then they can go to so-and-so's party, or they can have this, or however you choose to do it. But you just have to understand they are not detail-oriented. So to pull them back as a parent is really important for them to focus on what's going to help them long-term, to give them the freedom to do the things that they want to do in their lives. So if you have a sanguine employee, let's say, or maybe a group of them, you want the sanguine employees in front. They like to be in front. They like to be on stage. Remember, they're the cheerleaders. They like the center of attention. They love being on camera, right? But if they had to make a presentation, it would be all over the place. So what I would suggest is have that phlegmatic help that sanguine put together the presentations that they need to do, because the phlegmatic personality style is going to have all those details that the sanguine doesn't have the patience to do to put together for the presentation. So it's great to have the sanguine up front. They're the energy, they're the Energizer Bunny, and they can get stuff done. But you're going to find that the sanguine is not very much into having all the facts. They'll just touch on a little bit of the highlights instead of going deep into the information that you really want to share. So the sanguine can be a real great salesperson, absolutely great salesperson, but they're not organized to set up their appointments and to do the paperwork and all that. That's a real struggle for them. So if you're trying to build a team, it's a great idea to have these 4 characteristics and these personality styles, to have those 4 on your team in a way that can absolutely leverage the strengths and the weaknesses of each. So if you have a choleric child that's on the team or in the family, then they want to lead. They're a very strong personality style. They're very strong. So you got to be very careful how you deal with the choleric personality style as a child and an employee. Now, the choleric child or the employee is always right. It seems no matter what you say, no matter how you say it, they're right and you're wrong. In fact, if you have a choleric child and a phlegmatic parent, it's going to be like this many times. Because remember, the phlegmatic is very logical. They're very detail-oriented. They're slower. They're soft-spoken. They're kind of withdrawn. They're semi-shy. The choleric is, it's my way or the highway. I'm always right. So there's going to be some confrontation here. So if you have a choleric child, just understand that you want to leverage the strengths. You want to leverage the energy of the child to get stuff done. Now you're going to find, though, with a choleric child that they can be an excellent student because they're going to achieve, or at least they're going to strive to achieve, those A's and B's in their grades. So that's a good thing, right? But you're going to find that sometimes they rub the softer spoken people in a very wrong way because, again, they just want to run through walls. They want to get stuff done. So if you have a choleric employee or a boss, this is where it can get really hairy really, really fast. The choleric personality style is very driven, as I've said now a few times. They don't really care about feelings of other folks. But a good leader who is a choleric, whether it's a person in the home who leads or a person in the workplace who leads, has to understand the strengths and weaknesses and struggles and fears of the other personality styles. So if you have a choleric and you're a manager, or work for a choleric, it would be wise for that boss who's a choleric, and many bosses are, frankly, because they tend to get stuff done. They're the type of people who will work as many hours as it takes to get it done. But a good choleric leader will understand that what motivates them does not motivate the melancholy, does not motivate the phlegmatic, does not motivate the sanguine personality style. I don't know of hardly any people who are cholerics who really understand that. Because if they really understood that, they would handle their employees and or relatives in a very different way. Because again, none of us or few of us are wired exactly the same way. Now this leads into another subset of these four personality styles. Now these four I just mentioned are the primary personality styles. But all of us have secondary personality styles. So let me give you an example. Let's say your primary personality style is choleric, the one who takes and runs through walls and is a great leader, and they're generals in the military, and they're the explorers, and they're the people who are captains on ships, and they're the ones who get stuff done. That's their primary. But let's assume that their secondary, and again, I don't want to get into the details of how that's figured out, but all of us have it. So if their secondary is melancholy, which is feelings-based, they want to help people, they want to love people, they want to get stuff done to make a difference in people's lives. Again, if their primary is choleric, their second is melancholy, then guess what's going to happen? Their focus is going to be on other people to make a difference in the people's lives. They're going to run through walls, not for themselves, but for other people. So there are tests out there that you can take to see which of your primary personality is tops and which is second. But we all have, again, primary and secondary. So let me give you another example. Let's say you have a phlegmatic primary personality style. That's the logical one. That's the Spock personality style, who loves details, who loves being behind the scenes. But the secondary may be a melancholy, let's say. Let's say that they are very logical, but the melancholy part of them uses that logic to, again, inspire, to make a difference, to help other people, to change people's lives, versus the phlegmatic primary and choleric secondary would be, say, an inventor. Because the phlegmatic is very detail-oriented, right? They're the planners, they're the blueprint writers, if you will. But they're motivated, if the primary is phlegmatic, secondary is choleric, they're the ones who will take that wisdom, very smart personality style, and do something great with it, like I would suggest a Steve Jobs would be like that, or a Bill Gates would be potentially that type of personality combination. So we all have strengths and weaknesses. So as a young person, I would always get upset with myself because I wasn't like the choleric, because I'm a melancholy, right? That's my personality style. So I would get all bent out of shape with my self-esteem because I wasn't like somebody else's, until I learned the four categories in, I'd say, my late teens, and I realized that all of us have strengths in each of the four categories. So once I learned how to leverage my strengths and then support my weaknesses with stuff around me that can help me compensate for my struggles, then guess what happens? Then I blossom in a way, if you will, that I'm wired. And so can you. If you take the time to invest a little bit of effort to find out how you're wired and what makes you tick, and what makes tick the people in your own life, to see what motivates them and what keeps them going, then you're going to find pretty quickly that there are people in your life that you can leverage, not only to help them, but also, if they understand these four categories, to help you and also build people around you that will support your weaknesses. So let me give you some more examples. Let's say you're the melancholy temperament. It's a great idea to have people around you that keep pulling you out of your box, because us melancholies want to stay in the box. We want to stay in a cave. We want to stay in a room and not face the world at all, because we are based on emotion. We're based on fear. So you want to have those cholerics around you and those sanguines around you that you emulate, that you want to be like, that you strive to be like, that you really admire, I guess is a great description, that you admire that they're doing all this. So if you understand what moves them and what motivates them and what inspires them, and again, surrounding yourself with stuff that will compensate for your weaknesses, then guess what? You're going to realize a life. You're going to have a life that's way beyond what you even dreamed about. So if you're a choleric personality style, you would want to have little reminders around you to slow down, to think about other people's feelings, to remind yourself that not everybody's me, not everybody's a choleric, if that's the personality style that you have. You want to have those little triggers, if you will, that are around you all the time that will share with you the differences of the 4 types of people in your life. Now that's what wise people do. Not so wise people think that maybe everybody's like them, or better said, everybody should be like them. That's not the case at all. That's not how it works. That's not real life. Now again, even though there's over 2-3 billion people on the planet right now, there's only 4 types of people. I'll say it again: the melancholy, the phlegmatic, the sanguine, and the choleric. You're going to find that if you master these 4 categories, again, this is just the highlights of it. If you do your own homework and Google them and research it for yourself, you're going to see areas that you can leverage. You're going to see that the mistakes you've made in the past, and all of us have made mistakes, some of us have made big mistakes, instead of having those as stumbling blocks in your life, you can use those same mistakes and use them as stepping stones in your life. Because if you can leverage these 4 personality styles in your own life, your family is going to dramatically change. The relationships you're going to have are going to dramatically change. The workplace that you're in can dramatically change. If employers, let me highlight this very strongly, if employers would master understanding the differences between the 4 different types of people, and even rewire, if you will, or move people around in the organization that can leverage the strengths in those personality styles, your company's going to take off quickly. Because when people are in the strengths of their personality styles, it's not work. It's not hard. They're not struggling to be something that they're not. Many times people are in positions, in jobs, that they're doing stuff that they're not wired to do, but they have to stay there because it pays the bills. Well, think about this, employers. If you rewire how your business is running based on the 4 categories, the melancholies, the phlegmatics, the sanguines, and the cholerics, you're going to find that stuff is going to happen much more streamlined. You're going to find that goals are achieved much more quickly, because now you're tapping into what motivates and what moves people instead of what drags them back. So leverage your life on your strengths. Support your weaknesses around you with people and places and organizations and sayings and quotes and whatever you need to do to support those weaknesses, and not invest too much time in trying to make weaknesses your strengths. That's a big mistake that I made for a lot of years. I tried to make my weaknesses my strengths, so I'm wasting all these years trying to support something that's not going to be a strength anyway. So instead, I started to leverage what I'm good at, and then things started to happen in a big way. That's what I want you to do. Master these 4, the melancholy, the phlegmatic, the sanguine, and the choleric, and watch your life. Just start with you before you work on anybody else. Master these 4 for yourself. Understand what motivates you, what demotivates you, what inspires you, what does not inspire you. Rewire your working place if you can, and or your home life in a dramatic way. And then start looking at people through those 4 categories. And then you're going to see that some people do stuff because how they're wired. So if you have a coworker that's very quiet and just likes to do the accounting, they might be phlegmatics. That might be their strength zone, and that's okay. So don't get them on stage by just calling them up and say, I need you to do this. Don't do this. Don't create a shortcut for someone that's not prepared to do certain things. So master what I've just shared with you today, because if you master it, you can radically change your life in a dramatic way that can impact only the relationships you have at home and also at work. Now that I've shared how to figure them out, you have an opportunity now to leverage this information for the benefit of other people in your life. Because if you can leverage and master this information, it can change every relationship that you have. It'll teach you ways to communicate with people in a language they will understand. So if you're a melancholy person and you have to deal with a choleric personality style, they're not going to understand if you go to them in an emotional tone. Guess what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to turn a switch and get a little bit more charismatic, because that's what a choleric understands. With a choleric, if you want to deal with a melancholy person, you're going to have to tone it down and be a little more soft-spoken, although internally you're losing your mind. You're going crazy because you just want to do stuff and go, right? So all these personality styles, if you understand how the other person's wired, not only you're going to understand how they're wired, but if you're wise, you're going to understand how to communicate with them in a way that will enable them to open up instead of close down. That's the goal of life, isn't it? To have relationships with people where it's a win-win, not a win-lose. So I hope today's show helped you to understand how to figure them out. Again, this is just the highlights of this. It's so much deeper than this. But I hope this information is going to help you in your own relationships that will enable you to blossom in ways that you had never thought possible. Thanks for watching. If you want more information about me, just go over to johnwcarver.com. Again, johnwcarver.com. You can learn all about me and my family and what I do. And again, leverage this information. Don't just watch it and don't watch it again. Use it. Use this as a tool and change your life and the lives of people around you. Thanks so much.